So my first question is, back in the 90s, how did you come up with the idea of creating Milford-Haven?
I love answering this question, Cary.
Good.
It was an interesting journey.
Yes.
I grew up in Tokyo, and
Mhm.
my family and I were part of the shadow audience of AFRTS, Armed Forces Radio and Television
Mhm.
Service. So we weren't in the military, but we got to tune in and we listened to old time radio,
Okay.
which at the time was already old. It was
Right.
several decades earlier, but wonderful, and
Mhm.
we enjoyed it. And my family, it's a theater family. My grandmother was one of the founders of Equity. My father's a grad of Yale Drama School, et cetera. So drama and story was our family religion, if you will.
Mhm.
So, fast forward, I was working as an actress on Days of Our Lives.
Mhm.
And I sort of fell in love with the longer form of storytelling,
Mhm.
which I really hadn't been familiar with. I was more, episodic, where,
Right.
beginning, middle, end.
Right.
Um, so then I was invited to spend a summer in a little coastal town, and I was fascinated. So I grew up in Tokyo, then I lived in New York and then Los Angeles. So what I
Okay.
knew about a little town was nothing at all. So being in this little town, I was busy in the evenings with the show, but by day I went exploring and kind of took a look at what is life like in a little town? What is different about it? And I thought this would make a wonderful microcosm for a story. So the owner of a tiny radio station in a tiny town came backstage and said, "Hey, if you ever want to do something for radio, let me know."
Mhm.
So that was sort of ticking over in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
And I thought, what's the history of Cambria? That's the real town where I
Okay.
was performing.
Okay.
And I
Mhm.
found out it was a Welsh name.
Mhm.
So I looked at the map of Wales, where I found a town called Milford-Haven without a hyphen.
Okay.
And I thought, gee, it's just such an iconic name. And if you looked at photographs of the two coastlines, they were almost indistinguishable.
Really?
And so I understood why it was called Cambria. It really
Uh-huh.
looks like that rugged West Wales coastline.
Yeah.
And there were similarities with the towns as well. So I started writing scripts after I got back to LA and sending them to the
Mhm.
owner of the radio station, but I didn't get a response.
Okay.
So I thought I better call. The phone number had been changed. Uh-oh.
Okay.
So I drove up, there's about 4 hours away. I drive up and I go to the radio station. Well, things had changed. So when Wally Wallenbrock owned the station, he and his wife had a little pot of coffee on and little chintz curtains in the window. Well, now the walls were festooned with rock and roll posters. And
Oh.
there were
Oh.
some guys behind a desk. And I said, "Is Wally here?" And they said, "No, he sold the station." Oh. And I said, "I've been sending scripts." Yeah, they said, "Oh, yeah, Milford-Haven. Yeah, we've been throwing those away."
Oh.
Oh, so I said, "Let me just ask you one question before I leave. Uh, what if I can get sponsors?" Eyes got big.
Yeah.
They said, "Sponsors." So, Cary, I walked up and down Main Street, and people knew me from Days of Our Lives, and they knew
Okay.
me from the play. And I asked, what if I did a drama on the local radio station? They said yes. They gave me money. So at the end of the day, I came back with some money, and these wonderful guys said, "Okay, you're on the air." And I said, "Oh, when?" I had to run back to LA, finish writing scripts, find a cast, find a recording studio.
Yeah.
Anyway, I did all that. And I approached fellow actors, many of whom said yes.
Mhm.
And we were off to the races, went on the air, and we had, fantastic ratings. We moved the show then to a slightly larger city, San Luis Obispo. We had good ratings there.
Good.
And I sort of kept doing homework about media and radio.
Yeah.
And I found out that Rochester, New York was a key city as a test marketing city.
Right.
So I flew to Rochester. I found a really wonderful radio station supported by the New York State Council of the Arts,
Oh, okay.
and they took the show.
Mm-hmm.
So now I was getting good ratings basically, on both coasts. I got it on the air in a few more places. Uh, and the show was getting better.
Yeah.
The writing was getting better. My cast was sort of gelling. The stories got more interesting. And then I took a booth at National Association of
Yep.
Broadcasters. And you know how it is at a booth, you say the same thing 400 times all day.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the last day, these two guys came around the corner, sort of pointing at me, and they said, "Call this number. This is a BBC producer. She's been looking for you."
Okay.
Whoa. So I call Pat Ewing,
Mm-hmm.
and she said, "Oh, there you are." And she offered me a contract, and it was the first American radio serial that the BBC had ever tried to purchase.
Wonderful.
So we said yes. We were doing a happy dance in LA. Then we were biting our nails
Yeah.
because, we were going to be up against the
Yeah.
best radio dramas in the English language,
Mm-hmm.
arguably. Well, we went on the air, and
Mm-hmm.
about 2 months in, Pat Ewing called, and she said, "It's doing rather well."
Mm.
And she said, "You might like to pop over." I said, "What's really well?" And she said, 4.5 million listeners.
Wow.
So I did a press tour and, got a lot of wonderful press in
Mm-hmm.
London. And then while I was there, I thought, I really should go to the original town of Milford-Haven.
Mm-hmm.
So they said, "Yes, please come." Oh my goodness. When the train pulled into the station, I was met at the platform. I was then whisked off to a parade, and they gave me a reception in their town hall. So what had happened, Cary, was
Yeah.
had they were just moving towards tourism, this little town
Okay.
of Milford-Haven. And so I was inadvertently helping them by
Yeah.
having the name Milford-Haven all over the UK.
Mm-hmm.
So what an experience,
It sounds
just
like.
astonishing.
Yeah.
And I've stayed in touch with them. Actually, 3 years ago, I launched a literacy project
Right. Oh,
in
good.
Wales.
Good.
So it's been a very special relationship.
Backing up a bit, when you were growing up in Tokyo and were you listening to radio soap operas at that time? Was that part of your mix?
No, I
No.
never actually heard, like Stella Dallas and
Right.
Mara Purl. I wasn't to discover those until much later. We listened to Suspense when I
Right.
could stand it because I was a little kid and it scared the
Yes.
daylights out of me. Um, but some of the iconic shows, and I
Hmm.
just thought the voices were wonderful, the
Yeah.
sound effects
Right.
were wonderful. So I was always in love with that
Yeah.
audio drama.
Yeah. I was going to say you have to have some experience to know how to write for radio because it's not the same as writing for television, where so much is shown on radio. You've
Yes.
got to describe that. So you must have had some thought about, but you had that training, so to speak, with that
Yes.
radio audience. Yeah.
But when we went into the studio,
Yeah.
all of us were then TV and theater
Yeah.
actors, and we really had to train ourselves to articulate what would normally be silent.
Yeah.
So let's say you're an actor, you're in a scene, and you're considering a reaction. Well, you can't just sit there because a radio audience is going to start playing with their dial.
Yeah.
You have to, articulate some sort of sound that
Mhm.
expresses the emotion that you're dealing with at that moment. We found it very interesting. We all felt that we ended up being better performers because of learning how to perform for radio.
It's a different art. It certainly is,
Yeah.
and that's why you have people like Mercedes McCambridge and stuff that really break out and are known primarily for their radio work, and then secondly for their telework, so to speak.
Yeah.
And Milford Haven, you discovered through that. I'd read something online that you threw a dart at a board, but is that like a fictional
Oh, no.
story? Okay,
No, I
I was going to
didn't.
say that sounded a little too fabricated, but anyway, the casting of the show. you included your sister. I knew how you got
Yes.
to her. How did you get the other actors?
Several I had worked with
Yeah.
in Days of Our Lives, but also
Mhm.
the television soap opera world is sort of a small world, even though
Right.
there are hundreds of us.
Uh-huh.
And so I had a friend from As the World Turns and another friend from Bold and Beautiful. And
Mhm.
so we kind of knew each other from events. And I just laid it out and I said, look, I don't know if this is going to sell or not,
Yeah.
but will you take a flyer with me? And
Yeah.
most of them said yes.
Yeah.
And I must say, when I got the contract and the BBC payment, and I got to write checks to these wonderful colleagues, that was a
Mhm.
day. That was
Yeah, I bet. I
exciting.
bet. What were some of the challenges of writing this ongoing story for a strictly audio audience?
Well, I got very absorbed in the story. It was quite a discipline.
Yeah.
I was up at 5 every morning writing to keep up with the schedule.
Yeah.
And it's sort of a braided story
Mhm.
structure. So you've got the arc of several characters, and you need to make sure each of them is progressing,
Yes.
but then also that their paths are crossing in dramatic ways and, really keep it rolling. The challenge then was not letting the story conclude,
Yes.
right? Introducing yet another complication that
Mhm.
would lead to another dramatic moment. And I did learn some of that from performing in Days of Our Lives.
What was your production schedule like? Did you go into the studio all in mass? And how far in advance did your actors get their scripts and things of that nature?
We basically did 4 shows a month.
Okay.
The first week was recording, and everyone had their schedules. I
Mhm.
could rarely get
Ah,
everyone in the studio at the same
sure.
time.
Yeah.
So my wonderful engineer, Bill Bercuda, and I still work with Bill now on audiobooks.
Uh-huh.
Bill and I devised methods, and of course, we're recording on analog tape at that point. So we figured out, slice and dice ways of uh, putting together two actors who couldn't be there in person.
Mm.
So we had a week of production,
Yeah.
taking exceptional care of each little piece of tape to make sure that it was cataloged correctly and not
Yeah.
lost in the shuffle. And then the second week was post production, where we had this marvelous Foley artist, David Krebs,
Yeah.
who had studied with Cliff Thorsness.
Mm-hmm.
So he was old school Foley artist. And he was so great to work with that I started devising unusual situations so that, he could create wonderful sound effects.
Yeah.
And then a couple who are just fantastic award-winning composers,
Mm.
Marilyn Harris and Mark Wolfram, and they wrote a musical library for Milford-Haven. So we got to pick and choose, here's the scary music, here's the romantic music, and drop it in appropriately during post-production. Then we had the final mix. Then we were sending out the shows to the BBC,
Yep.
but I meanwhile also wrote press releases for each guest star.
Oh,
So
okay.
that accompanied the shows when they were shipped off to London. And then the fourth week, I'm writing the
Yeah.
next batch of books. Yeah. So it
Yeah.
was it was intense.
How did you find this Foley artist? Did he been working in television and film or something? And you, or
He worked with engineer Bill
uh-huh.
on some other audio projects, and
Okay.
yes, he worked
Okay.
on television. But he himself was an aficionado of old time radio.
Yeah.
So he jumped at the chance when he heard we were doing radio.
Yeah. Why do you think Milford connected so strongly with UK audiences?
I think it was a trip to California for them. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there had never been an American show
Right.
on so it was really something different.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what the press picked up on.
Mm-hmm.
And then doing a press tour was very helpful.
Yeah.
There's a wonderful show called Pebble Mill, which was something like, it was a morning talk show.
Mhm.
And so I got to answer questions. So I think we were a novelty. And then there was sort of a fascination was how come there's a Milford-Haven in America when there's a Milford-Haven here,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And, people hundreds of years earlier from Milford-Haven had circled the globe and established several locations named Milford.
Oh,
One,
really?
one's
Yeah.
in New Zealand, one's in Virginia. So I did some sort of historical research on that and have since connected with those towns, which
Hmm.
has been really fun.
Yeah. Yeah. There's in Milford, Illinois, I believe. So there you go. My home state, of course. So how did you get the audio to the UK, or for that matter, any other affiliate that you had?
It literally was a, Federal Express package. It was
Yeah.
sent overseas, or it was DHL,
Yeah. Yeah.
the
I
case of
understand.
overseas shipment. Yeah.
These were the old school days when that's how
Yes.
we did it. Exactly. I understand. Um, what about the show in America? Was America receptive? Not as receptive as England, I guess.
Well, there were sort of two levels.
Uh-huh.
The actual audiences loved the show.
Yeah.
So anytime we actually got on the air, again, I went to Rochester and did a press tour there
Hmm.
and had a fabulous response.
Wonderful.
And of course, in California, it became very well known. But I did approach American syndicators,
Yeah.
but they, uh, in a nutshell, didn't get it.
Yeah.
I mean, they said, "Did you notice you missed radio drama by a couple of decades?"
Hmm.
And I said, "I did notice that, but did you notice the Nielsen ratings we are getting?"
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they said, "Well, we'll check the numbers." Then they came back and they said, "The numbers are bad." I said, "No, no, no. The numbers are zero in most of the markets you checked because the show isn't there yet.
Right.
That's why we need you."
Yeah.
They couldn't wrap their heads around
Yeah.
this. And in
No.
the meanwhile, the BBC came along. And so I just focused on that.
Yeah. Very good. How long did Milford air or exist as a radio drama on the Beat?
About 2 years.
About 2 years. Why did it have to come to an end? It sounds like it was doing well.
Well, that was an interesting kind of political thing.
Uh-huh.
It so happened that um, I was at a reception
Uh-huh.
where there was a member of the House of Lords,
Yeah.
and we were chatting.
Hmm.
And I said, "Tell me something interesting that's being discussed in the House of Lords." He said, "Well, broadcasting is being discussed." So now I'm all
Yes.
ears.
Hmm.
That actually there's this funny little American radio program that's causing a stir. And I said, "Oh, really?" And he said it had created a controversy between people who felt British Airways should be for the Brits, with no
Oh, I
programming
see.
coming
Mm.
from the US, from Australia, from South Africa, from former, you know, empire locations. And then there were those who felt just the opposite, that we now had shifted. We were a global society and we should be exporting and importing
Hmm.
programs any chance we have, particularly if we're all speaking the English language. How enriching is that, and how
Yeah.
wonderful. And he said that temporarily the vote went against the importation of so-called foreign programming. Of course, it really was too late for that. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
the horse had left the barn. So
Right.
that position didn't last. But we see these trends occasionally, right? Where whether it's America saying America for the Americans, or it's the
Yeah.
Brits saying, England for the Brits, these tend to be temporary because they're not exactly authentic. We are a connected world.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm very grateful that my show was one of those things that was a breakthrough.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I think it's fantastic. I think it's wonderful to revive something. I'm speaking strictly from an American sense. I think the Brits have always been more tolerant of radio drama and stuff like that. But we got into a whole radio thing that was just music and talk. And I love the idea of bringing back these other genres because so much can be done with them. There's
Oh,
such
it's so
creativity.
rich.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
look what's happened now with audio streaming. I mean, there's so
Yes.
much great programming.
Yep.
It's being delivered a little differently,
Yeah.
but still the door is open now for
Yes.
fantastic creativity in the
Yeah.
audio realm.
Right. No, I think you were a little ahead of your time. Had you now we love with podcasting, we love the serial, literally the serial podcasts and
Yeah.
things like that. And people getting into the headspace of listening to these ongoing stories and dialogue and stuff like that. But it took a whole shift in technology kind of to make it happen. So you were ahead of your time in that sense. But Milford never went away, did it?
No, I mean, every time I've thought I'm done with it, it comes back in
Yeah.
another form. I mean, one thing I did that was so wonderful and
Yeah.
rich, I thought about younger people
Right.
who had never experienced radio drama as we had.
Yes.
I wrote a curriculum and I got invited as a guest, lecturer, guest teacher.
Uh-huh.
Actually ended up doing this for about 15 years. I was in the LA Unified. I
Yes.
taught it at the University of Alaska, University of Colorado. I went back to my school in Tokyo and I wrote altogether about 100 scripts with students
Wonderful.
in a program I called STAR, Student Theater and Radio.
Uh-huh.
And I learned a lot, and so did the kids. They were expressing their own ideas,
Yeah.
but in this form. And what I felt that radio, the structure of a radio drama, really is the basis of the structure of a television drama.
Right.
It was the foundation. So it's great to understand that, experience it, and teach it.
Yeah. And the books have come along as well. You're a
Oh,
novelist?
books.
Yeah.
Yes, this has been fascinating. So while I was on the BBC,
Yes.
the the way the BBC broadcast schedule
Yeah.
works is something like American television. So there's a hiatus.
Right.
And then they had a great magazine that kind of filled in until the next season began. And so I approached them and said, what about publishing synopses of what
Oh,
had happened
yes.
in Milford-Haven? So when the show starts again in the autumn, people are caught up. They liked that idea, but then that was mentioned in a press interview, and I suddenly had a barrage of invitations from publishers to come and do books. So I met with a lot of the publishers,
Huh?
and it was interesting because the publishing business was then going through a big transition.
Right.
Bertelsmann, which is a huge German conglomerate,
Yes.
buying Random House, and all these things were happening. So I was offered a contract with Random House, but I also was issued a warning that Bertelsmann would likely bury it.
Oh,
And so, but by then I had, as I said, 4.5 million listeners, and now they're looking for books.
yeah.
So I went to the head of New York Times book publishing, and we put together an advisory board and started a publishing venture kind of at the outset of self-publishing, but it quickly outgrew that model and became independent publishing.
Ah, good. Hmm.
So now I'm on the 14th book in the series, and they've all become bestsellers, and they've won 75 book awards.
Good for you.
Thank you. It's such an interesting journey. I really love it. As much as I loved writing the scripts,
Yeah.
I must say that writing the novels without the constriction of a 30-minute, window,
Yeah.
I can go into more depth and detail, and I'm really enjoying that. And it has ended up that my books are in what's called women's fiction,
Ah.
which is a huge genre with
Hmm.
about 40 million listeners. And
Hmm.
I'm really enjoying being in that community.
Good. Yes.
So, yeah,
And you do audiobooks of them, right?
we sure do.
Yeah. Very good. Because so we've come full circle in a way.
We
But
have, we have. We're
yeah,
back to audio. I know.
but it had to be daunting to go from writing for the air to now writing for the printed page. That had to be a
Oh, it
big
was.
swing.
Oh,
Yes.
you don't want to see the first drafts of those novels
I
because the dialogue was great
yeah,
and everything else was terrible.
yeah.
I had to learn.
Well, you've learned from the ground up with all these things, but I'm impressed that you've mastered them. Very few people can say how many books did you say 14 or something? I
Yeah,
mean,
so far.
that's remarkable. Now, are we going to bring Milford back to the audio world?
The original radio drama?
Yes.
Well, it
Or
could.
are we relaunch? We're relaunching a lot of things, in media,
Well,
TV.
from your lips to God's ears, why
Yeah,
not?
I
You
think
know,
so. I think it'd be great fun. I think great fun. And again, a full circle moment,
right,
so
right.
you don't know where I don't think you envisioned where Milford would go when you started. So who knows where it's going to go
I
now?
had no idea. You're
Yeah,
absolutely right. You're absolutely right. It's a journey,
yeah,
and it's nice to be willing, to be receptive,
yeah.
to be ready to say, okay, I'll take the next challenge.
Now, would you want to live in Milford Haven?
In Wales,
Yes.
oh, I would love to spend like part of the year there.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
love the people so much, and there's such a rich history.
Yeah.
Mentioned this literacy project. So
Yes.
I approached the town council that had once upon a time honored me, and I said,
Yes.
how about if I give a grant? Would you help me locate uh, an entity that would like to work with me on this? Well, there's a wonderful museum there.
Mhm.
And the head of that museum had been at the National Library of Wales,
Okay.
exactly like the Library of Congress.
Hmm.
And it's a very impressive. I had a tour of that library. Wow.
Yeah.
It's in Aberystwyth. So she was a librarian there, a very big deal. And she moved to the little town of Milford Haven to care for her mom.
Ah, okay.
So I had this dynamo partner to work with. And Sue and I devised a curriculum, and we worked with 5 schools. And we were required that the students write about 5 different historical periods of that town. So one period was 13,000 years ago, based on archaeological information that has come to light. One period was the Victorian, one period was the 1970s, and so forth. And the students wrote as if they had lived in those time periods.
Hmm.
They did a brilliant job. And we have
Wonderful.
this incredible book, which was published in English and in Welsh.
Ah, in Welsh. Great.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Incomprehensible to me,
Yeah,
but
yes.
but
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful
Yes.
language.
Good for
And it
them.
turns out that I also have Welsh heritage. So it turned into sort of also a personal project. So, you know, if the fates allow, if I'm able to spend more time there, I would love to.
Yeah. Good for you. Are you at work on a Milford Haven book net currently?
Always,
Oh, I
always
thought that was going to be your answer. I had a feeling.
always. So the next
Yes.
one, let's see, the last one came out in May.
Okay.
Next one gets published in October.
Okay.
And then I'm also writing a prequel series about uh, one of my characters who's a journalist
Okay.
based on my years of being a journalist.
Oh, okay. Very
That's
good.
been, doing a lot of research on that. Very
Yeah.
fun. And then the story also is going to leap forward 25 years. So the core series of books is still based in the 90s, which
Okay.
is based on the radio show.
Hmm.
Um, but next year we start with what has happened to those main characters. Now they're grown up, and who did they marry, and what happened in their careers, and what children did they have, and so forth. So there's world building going on for the future of Milford Haven.
Hmm.
So it just keeps expanding.
The story continues.
Story
That's
continues.
what we love.